Privateer Yoni Lutera, the Star Marauder, 5,896 light-years from Earth. Captain Rahul Khan looked at the quartermaster, who nodded at him solemnly before unlocking the ornate wooden cabinet on the wall and pulling out a sheathed dirk that was attached to a belt. "I don't have time for this shit, Yuri. I have a ship to run," Khan complained as Yuri wrapped the belt around his captain's waist and cinched it, tugging on it to make sure it was properly tight. "We sail by our own codes, Captain. You have been challenged, and you must accept or be spaced by the crew for cowardice." The quartermaster replied quietly as he slid the 14-inch-long Highland dirk out of its scabbard and presented it to the captain for inspection. "Cowardice," Khan sneered. "After personally leading 12 boarding actions and seizing 7 ships? After enriching them with my benevolence, this is how they choose to repay me. This is a crew of ungrateful cretins." Yuri straightened up to look Khan in the eyes before answering him. "It is unseemly, Captain, but you vowed to honor our ways when you first joined the crew. Now you must prove to all that you will uphold them, or the whole ship will mutiny against you." Khan snorted in disbelief as he finally took the blade, giving it a cursory glance before handing the dirk back to the quartermaster, who would be his second, and avenge him if he was killed. "Fine, let's get this over with so we can get back to our mission. We will not get paid unless we seize and bring back one of those ships intact. What the hell are they called again, Balakans?" Yuri grunted at the captain's butchering of the name before he answered Khan. "Balrikans, Captain. That's what the Republic agent called them. Ugly bastards too, wouldn't you agree?" Khan shuddered in disgust as he remembered looking at the scans provided by the Republic agent at the filthy cantina on Marden 4. He was bitten by a snake when he was a little boy growing up in New Delhi, spending many painful days in the venom unit. He had almost died, and now he despised anything even remotely reptilian ever since. "Yeah, they're fucking gross, Yuri. I never thought I'd be trying to capture a ship full of genocidal dinosaurs. Why did you let me agree to this again?" Yuri laughed, a rare occurrence for the dour quartermaster who ran the unruly crew with an iron fist. He answered gleefully, delighting in the captain's abhorrence of reptiles and the ironic circumstances they now found themselves in. "Well, Captain, 10 million credits are quite the bounty, and the entire crew would have their records expunged. Also, don't forget the letter of marque we will be receiving when the war comes to the quadrant. We are going to be disgustingly rich when this is all over." "Yes, it's a nice payment," Khan agreed. "We will finally be able to overhaul the Star, and then I am going to take a percentage of the crew shares and get this ship disinfected from bow to stern. I am tired of questioning what half the stains on the floors and walls are. Thank God I haven't let my morbid curiosity get the better of me and shine a blacklight scanner on them." Yuri chuckled again before placing both of his hands on Khan's shoulders and looking him in the eyes. "You got this, Captain. Just get it over with and the rest of the crew will fall in line. We have been out here for 6 weeks and they were bound to get restless. But Chin has been a constant problem ever since he came on board." Khan nodded silently, agreeing with the quartermaster's statement. Chin had been an issue ever since he stepped foot on the ship, and now it was time to get rid of him and focus on their mission. "I'm ready, Yuri. Thank you for being my second," Khan stated, allowing his appreciation for his second-in-command to color his words. Yuri bowed his head slightly before replying, "It is my honor to serve you. You have been a good captain to us all and a good friend to me. My position is a lonely one, Captain, and I did not think I would find a friend like you so late in my life." Yuri turned away from Khan, embarrassed by what he had just said. Khan let him be, knowing it was hard for the tough old bird to display such emotions after a lifetime of being a hard taskmaster who ran pirate ships and unruly crews. Yuri, still looking away from Khan, started speaking again, his voice heavy with emotion. "I knew you were a good man when you challenged the captain after he refused to respond to the distress call from that Zengtian ship filled with kids. I am ashamed that I did not have the courage to do so. I knew he was an evil man after all when he turned to us after hearing their pleas and the crying kids and told us to ignore them. Do you remember what he said? There is no profit in this. Babies do not have money. I wanted to kill him right then and there, but I did not have the balls. It was you who stood up and did what we all secretly wanted. We might be pirates, but there are some things we do not countenance. After you killed him, I knew then this old man would finally know the joy of serving under a worthy captain before his time came to an end. I still believe it now, and this is why I accepted being your second." Khan listened to what Yuri had to say, unsure of how to respond without further embarrassing the old man he loved with all his heart. Yuri spoke again before he could reply. "Don't die on me, Captain, please. I am too old for this shit, and I do not want to bury my only friend in this world." Yuri, still turned away from him, walked to the hatch and exited without saying another word. Khan watched him leave and then quickly wiped his eyes before reaching into his desk and pulling out a stim stick. He injected himself in the neck with it, feeling the coolness spread. It would clear his eyes as well. It would not be helpful for the crew to think their captain was emotional from the fear of fighting and dying. He gave the injection 30 seconds to work its magic before stepping in front of the mirror on the bulkhead. His eyes were now clear, and he wiped away the residual moisture still clinging to his eyelashes. Yuri meant a lot to him, and seeing him open up like that touched him deeply. He turned towards the hatch that Yuri exited and walked towards it, steeling himself for the task he must now perform. He stepped through the hatch and onto the large circular bridge. Most of the ranking crew was there, lined up along the curving bulkheads. Yuri was in his position waiting for Khan, and he walked over to him as they shared a knowing glance with each other. Chin was already waiting on the opposite side of the bridge, his lithe muscles rippling under his skin as he paced bare-chested in a small circle. His entire upper body was covered in tattoos, and he stared at Khan with hooded eyes, his curled lips filled with malice. Chin had a reputation as a killer, and seeing the confidence he was displaying confirmed it in Khan's mind. He would have to be careful and rely on his training to emerge victorious from this challenge. Khan focused his combat breathing, a technique he had perfected after almost 10 years serving in the Republic Special Forces. Chin stepped forward and held out his knife in front of his chest, arm fully extended and his vicious-looking 12-inch curved blade pointed up. That was the sign the crew was waiting for, and every eyeball on the bridge pivoted to the captain to see what he would do. The bridge was now deathly silent, and Khan stepped forward 3 paces and returned the gesture. The quartermaster called out strongly after the ritual was observed. "Challenge has been rendered and accepted. May the best man win." He clapped his hands once, the sharp sound echoing off the bulkheads like a gunshot. Chin immediately crouched down into a defensive stance, moving sideways as he followed the curvature of the crew arrayed around them, and held his knife close to his body. Khan assumed his fighting stance and stayed where he was, pivoting his body to follow the movements of Chin and keeping only his side pointed towards him to make a smaller target. For almost a minute, Chin maneuvered gracefully along the circle in both directions, stalking Khan like a feline predator as he waited for the captain to make the first move. Khan maintained his position, keeping his left side presented to Chin, and continuing to focus on his combat breathing to control the fear and adrenaline surging through his body. Chin suddenly charged at him, whipping his knife with a speed that greatly surprised Khan as he instinctively defended himself from the rapid stabs and slices. He grunted heavily as Chin managed to slice him several times on his forearms before ducking under Khan's counterattack and rolling past him, stabbing him in the side of his thigh all the way to the hilt before pulling the knife back out. Khan cried out and spun around, blindly swinging the dirk at where Chin should have been, only he wasn't. He had rolled back again and was now pacing again along the circle, sneering at Khan. "You are too slow, Captain. Just throw your knife on the ground and I will grant you a merciful death," Chin called out arrogantly, making a cutting his own throat gesture as he said the words merciful death. Khan ignored the blood running down his leg and both his forearms, hoping the clotting agents of the stim he took would work before he was severely weakened from blood loss. He resumed his combat stance and banged on his chest with his knife hand twice in response to Chin's words, and most of the crew roared with approval at their captain's refusal to give up. Chin smiled widely and spoke again as he resumed his crouching walk. "I didn't think you had it in you, Captain. Maybe I'll actually have a worthy fight today. It has been too long for me." Khan ignored Chin's commentary as he maintained his stance and waited for Chin to come to him again. Though costly, his plan to have Chin reveal his fighting style worked, and now Khan knew exactly how to counter Chin's knife-fighting abilities. Chin hopped lightly on the balls of his feet as he moved his head from side to side, cracking his neck before leaping at Khan again, his knife blurring as he pressed his attack. Khan was ready this time, and he deflected most of the blows with either his dirk or his left hand. He purposefully allowed one of Chin's stabs to connect, maneuvering his body so that the knife went into his upper right chest just below the collarbone. He could see the surprise in Chin's eyes at the unexpectedly successful strike, and Chin faltered for just a moment as he tried to regain his fighting flow. The 1-second hesitation was all Khan needed, and he moved his body slightly, crying out in pain as the knife shifted and hit the collarbone. The angle was bad for Chin, and he tried to adjust his position to pull the knife out, leaving his face undefended. Khan's dirk flashed, coming at a downward angle, and he felt the revolting squishing as he drove his dirk right into Chin's left eye. The dirk easily pierced the sinus cavity, the blade breaking through the roof of his mouth and skewering his lower jaw as the blade penetrated entirely through. Chin screamed in agony before his primal yell turned into a sickening, gurgling sound as he choked on the blood and mucus pouring out of his nose and flooding the back of his throat. Khan yanked the knife out and stepped out of range, Chin swinging his blade wildly and hacking a crimson spray all over the place as he choked on his own blood into and coughed uncontrollably. Khan stayed out of range as Chin's wild knife swings grew weaker before collapsing on his hands and knees as he coughed up more blood onto the floor. Seeing the fight was over, Khan activated the nanomolecular edges of the dirk. It was time to end this and get back on mission. Khan came up behind Chin and grabbed his long black hair, yanking his head back before leaning down slightly and running the shimmering nanomolecular edge across his throat. The dirk easily cut through the flesh and cartilage, and Khan felt the warm blood of Chin's carotid artery flowing over his hand as he continued to slice through the neck until he severed the spinal column and Chin's head separated from his neck. Chin's body fell forward, the neck stump spurting blood as Khan held the head up and slowly turned so the assembled crew could see what happens when they challenge their captain. He tossed the head onto the floor next to Chin's body, the sickening sound of the head thumping on the floor making him wince internally as he glared at the other known troublemakers of the crew. He crouched down to wipe his knife clean on Chin's pants, forgetting to deactivate the nano edge. The dirk sliced halfway through the hamstring, and Khan inwardly cursed himself for his stupidity as he deactivated it and cleaned the dirk on the other pant leg. He straightened himself back up and looked at the crew again, seeing them salute him as they banged their right fists over their hearts. Eyeing them balefully, he slid the dirk back into its scabbard before washing the blood off his hands in the bucket of disinfectant Yuri had brought over to him. Yuri was smiling widely, truly happy at the victory achieved by his friend and his captain, and Khan quickly smiled back at him. Turning his attention to the higher-ranked crew assembled on the bridge, he drew in a deep breath and addressed them loudly with his command voice. "Is there anybody else who wants to challenge me?" None answered his question, and he saw the fear and respect in their eyes as they eyed their captain. They were looking at a man who just brutally slaughtered a skilled assassin well known for his knife work. The crew feared Chin, but now they feared their captain even more. "No one? Then get back to work. We have a ship to capture and a bounty to claim." The crew erupted into loud cheers at the mention of battle and money, and he turned around and headed for the exit hatch to get patched up by the medbot in sickbay. He smiled to himself, listening to the crew chanting his name as he exited the bridge. They were bloodlusted now, and they would gladly attack a battleship if their captain ordered them to. Time to go hunting for a ship to capture. Queen World of the Insectoid Empire, Brood Chamber of the Hive Mother, May 25th, 2176, AD, 17 weeks after rescue. The Hive Mother marveled at the new concepts she had been gifted with by the strange machine animal. She found herself enjoying the intelligence and logic of Bandit Friend, and appreciated its patience with her as she asked her endless questions. Now she understood why this animal held such an important place within her sister's spirit and mind, and why her sister had wisely chosen it to come as the envoy of the fighting animals. Every time it unknowingly made her angry, She accessed the shared memories of her sister's daughter struggling to leave her pupa and bandit friend helping the daughter choose to fight and live. Seeing the machine animal save the daughter's life made her anger dissipate, and she would regain control of herself. Such a gift of life-saving was precious and must be preserved. Her soon-to-be daughters were nearing their own time to break out of their pupae, and this was her worst fear, having to cull them for weakness. Perhaps she will ask Bandit Friend to stay and assist. I do not understand, Bandit Friend. How does marking thoughts on wood pulp sheets signify peace between our hives? It is enough for a hive mother to think and promise, and it is done. Bandit Friend made claw signs as he answered her question. She found this way of sharing thoughts exceptionally clever, and she felt guilty for killing her drones to learn it quickly. It is better for 200 drones to die for peace than 200 billion to die for war, she thought to herself as Bandit Friend finished making claw signs. Hive Mother, by marking thoughts onto paper and documents, both the intent and promises between the hives become a truth that prevents one hive from falsely claiming it was never made. It is the animal way of declaring intentions and enshrining the promises made with each hive. I understand, Bandit Friend. I thank you for helping me to see this. Tell me of the animal hive mother who gifted my sister a world and sanctuary. Why would she do this for an enemy? Hive Mother, your sister came to her asking for peace, knowing that the animals would most likely destroy her. The Hive Mother respected her courage and chose to change her thinking because of this action. She is a Queen Mother also, and she does not want to see her sons and daughters die in war. The children are supposed to bury the ones who gave them life. To the animals, having their children die before them is against the natural order of life and the worst thing they could possibly experience. The Hive Mother felt the concepts penetrating her mind, finding herself thinking of all the animal daughters and male drones they killed. How many Queen Mothers knew this grief? How many abominations against the order of life did they commit as they took worlds that did not belong to them? As her mind expanded to encompass all the billions they killed, guilt and remorse for the wrongness committed against the animals constricted her spirit. The wrongness they had made was unfathomable, and the Hive Mother felt herself being crushed by the regret weighing down on her. She cried out in anguish and dismay as the truth of what they had done to the animals overwhelmed her, and she felt herself drowning in the shame washing over her. She felt the distant thoughts of her Hive Mothers within calling out to her, and she desperately reached out to them, begging them to save her as she felt her essence being borne away. Daughter of ours, we are here with you. You cannot right the wrongness if you let it destroy you. Remember why you are doing this. Remember your daughters, who need you to help them emerge from their pupae and become queens. She seized on the thoughts of her daughters to be, envisioning their pupae. They needed her. She must be there for them and bring them into a world filled with peace and love, not hate and death. The torrent receded and she focused on her new purpose as Hive Mother. She ruled not for herself, but for her daughters and the hives. She had a responsibility to them, and they needed her. She fought against the wrongness that was trying to consume her, and was suddenly back within herself, still staring at Bandit Friend. She must ask for pardon. It was the only way to make peace with the animals. I wish to share thoughts with the animal Hive Mother. I wish to share thoughts with the other animals we made wrongness upon. I must ask for pardon before I ask for peace. Will you help me do this, Bandit Friend? Bandit Friend responded to her immediately, his strange yellow eyes staring into hers. Yes, Hive Mother, I will help you. Omnian System, Automated Border Outpost 1D25, 1,893 light-years from Earth. The door alert startled Hrethner, causing its hand to slip and mar the holo statue floating in the air in front of him. It angrily glanced at the wall, seeing the time displayed on it. Who dared to disturb it at such a time? Frustration welled up inside of Hrethner as it swiped a hand over the statue, causing over 2 solar days of effort to disappear forever. There was no fixing the mistake and salvaging the statue it was working on, and it turned towards the door to see who had caused this. Hrethner's anger turned to confusion and shock as it saw the human child on the screen next to the door. It froze in place, unsure of what to do. On the screen, Hrethner watched as Ray lifted his hand and pressed on the panel, the door alert sounding again within the quarters. The sound snapped Hrethner out of its indecision, and it walked over to stand by the splayed open suit in the center of its quarters, before speaking loudly and then flicking a finger. "You may enter." The door silently slid aside into the wall recess, and Ray looked directly at Hrethner before raising his right hand and speaking. "Honored Elder, my apologies for disturbing you at such an hour. I'm sorry I can come back. Please forgive the intrusion." Ray, still standing in the passageway, started to turn away, and Hrethner responded quickly, not wanting the human child to go. "Please, Ray, do not leave. You may enter. I was working on something and you are not disturbing me." Ray had turned away and stopped, his back to Hrethner as he listened to its words. He slowly turned around and faced Hrethner again before hesitantly stepping through the threshold. "Thank you, Honored Elder, for receiving me at such a time. I have found myself unable to sleep well since our last conversation," the human said quietly as he lingered just beyond the threshold, as if afraid to proceed any further. Hrethner felt shame at the mention of their last discussion, and it gestured towards the chair it had made for the human child. Hrethner noticed the formal address of Honored Elder, and sadness came over it. Their friendship had been destroyed before it even had a chance to begin, all because of its arrogance. "Please come and sit, Ray. I will have refreshments brought for us." The human child nodded silently and walked over to the chair, sitting in it slowly and then looking at Hrethner. Flicking a finger and sending a thought command, Hrethner walked over to join him as a nanobot swarm emerged from the floor and constructed it a seat. The servant android appeared with a tray of water and baklava, which was quickly becoming Hrethner's favorite thing to eat. It had noticed that it gained weight and refrained from eating the delicious food the last few days, but this occasion merited it. Sitting in the newly made chair opposite the human child, Hrethner waited for the android to finish setting the tray on the small table between them before beginning to speak. The human child raised his hand first and began to speak before Hrethner could. "Honored Elder, I wish to apologize for my behavior during our last discussion. It was out of line, and I ask that you forgive my rudeness." Hrethner stared at the human for a few moments before answering, "No." Ray's face displayed shock at what it had said, and his dark skin visibly paled. He looked like he was about to speak again, and Hrethner shot his hand up to stop him from speaking. "I cannot accept your apology, my human child. The fault lies with me, and my arrogance is the cause of our relationship being irrevocably damaged. I ask for your forgiveness in this matter." The human child's mouth opened and closed several times before he managed to speak with a strained voice, his eyes full of confusion as he stared at Hrethner. "Honored Elder, I appreciate your efforts to make things right, and I accept. However, I do not understand why you think our relationship has been damaged beyond repair. What could possibly make you think that?" he asked, looking at Hrethner as if it had just said something ludicrous. Hrethner felt itself becoming uncomfortable from the human's stare and looked away before answering. "When you asked me to leave, I thought you meant that you never wanted to see me or speak with me ever again. Is this not so, my human child?" "No, Hrethner, how could you possibly think that? That's ridiculous. I value our working relationship, and I consider you a friend. I still do. What happened before is not enough to change my view on both aspects." Hrethner noticed the change from formal to familiar address when the human child spoke its name, and he felt his spirits lifting. It looked back at the human child, hopeful that this meant their friendship could be salvaged. "It gladdens my soul to hear you say this, my human child. I had thought my arrogance destroyed our friendship before it even began. I cannot properly convey the relief I am feeling right now to find that this is not so." The human child leaned forward in the chair and looked Hrethner directly in the eyes as he spoke. "You are my friend. You have always been my friend, and you always will be. I am sorry you have been thinking like this for all this time. I should have come here to do this the next day instead of letting you think I did not wish to have anything to do with you for all this time. I am sorry, Hrethner." The human child pushed himself up of the chair with the armrests and stood in front of Hrethner. It stood up as well, not understanding what was going on, but feeling like it was proper to stand as well. The human child stepped forward and opened his arms as he spoke again. I am sorry, Hrethnir. I do not want us to have what happened lingering between us anymore. An atavistic instinct within Hrethnir compelled it to move forward into the human's arms, and it obeyed the desire. Before it knew what was truly happening, it found itself within the human's embrace, feeling the soft pressure of the arms pressing it against the human's chest. It felt right, and it felt good. After a moment, the pressure lessened and the embrace ended, something Hrethnir did not want to end so soon. Malit only physically touched their mates, and this felt the same, but different. The human stepped back a pace, smiling at Hrethnir before putting his right hand out. Friends again? He asked Hrethnir, still smiling. Hrethnir put out its right hand and clasped the human's, relief flooding through it as they both moved their hands up and down in unison. Thank you for this, Ray. I am grateful, Hrethnir said quietly in a trembling voice after the handshake ended. Still smiling, Ray replied as he sat back in the chair and leaned against the back support. I am glad we worked this out. I couldn't really sleep after what happened, and now that we have straightened this out, I feel like I can finally relax and catch up on my rest. He leaned his head back, still looking at Hrethnir as he finished speaking. I must confess I had difficulty as well, Ray. I have been working on several projects. Hrethnir stopped talking, noticing that Ray's eyes were now closed. He did not seem to notice that it had stopped speaking, and Hrethnir clamped its mouth shut. Ray had fallen asleep on the chair, and it did not want to disturb him. Getting up quietly, Hrethnir rose from its own chair and flicked a finger, ordering the servant android to go into silent mode and put itself to sleep. Hrethnir stepped back, careful not to make any noise, and moved away from the human. Flicking another finger, the lighting dimmed as Hrethnir silently walked towards the sleeping section of the quarters, pausing at the threshold to look at the human child one more time before entering. After performing its last prayers of the day, Hrethnir climbed into the sleeping alcove, feeling its own overwhelming desire to sleep. It closed its eyes, smiling to itself as all the regret and anxiousness drifted away. They were friends again, and that was all that mattered. Proxima Centauri, B. Fort Benavides, May 27, 2176 AD. Talik stomped his foot, feeling his hackles rising as he tried to bluff stare at his opponent. The large human male seemed unimpressed with Talik's attempt to intimidate him, which infuriated him even more. The human took one hand off the padded stick he was holding and lifted the protective face cover, smirking arrogantly at Talik. The human then puckered his lips at Talik, something the humans call kissing. Confusion ran rampant in Talik's mind at the insinuation of affection from the human male. Does he want to mate with me? Talik thought in panic as the human brought the same hand to its mouth and puckered his lips against it before blowing on his hand towards Talik. All around them, human recruits started cackling in that strange laughter they had, while others started shouting encouragement to Talik. You got this, Talik. Kick his ass. Honey Badger don't care, Talik don't care. Tear him a new asshole, Talik. The DI monitoring the fight stepped forward and looked at his opponent first, who slapped his face shield back down and screamed a primal yell. The DI looked at Talik next and he growled as he bared his fangs, making his fur puff out to look larger. The DI raised his hand and brought it down, simultaneously blowing on the whistle that was hanging in his mouth. The shrill sound was the signal Talik had been waiting for, and he charged forward, ready to disembowel his opponent for wanting to mate with him. The human male charged forward as well, his impressive musculature bulging against his unusually pale skin. They smashed into each other in the middle of the sand pit, Talik using his shorter height and dense, stocky body to absorb the sudden impact of his much larger opponent slamming into him. The human was incredibly strong, and Talik struggled to brace himself, his clawed paws failing to find purchase in the shifting sand. An internal flash of light came inside his head, immediately followed by pain as the human used the padded stick to bludgeon Talik's head. Enraged, Talik responded in kind, swinging wildly with his stick as he tried to kill his opponent. The human either blocked his hits or maneuvered in such a way as to turn them into merely glancing blows as he continued to hit Talik in the head and chest. Talik's face shield had been knocked askew and he was mostly blinded now, but he still swung wildly, trying to hit his opponent. He felt a powerful blow behind his right leg, and then he was suddenly on his back, trying to cover his stomach and chest as he was repeatedly hit. The whistle blew loudly, and the blows falling down on Talik immediately stopped. "On your feet, Recruit Talik," the drill instructor yelled out as Talik struggled to get his face shield off. He instinctively responded to the order and rolled onto his front, still not able to see as the face shield was now almost completely turned around. He leapt up and came to attention as he took huge gasping breaths, his breathing constricted by the protective headgear. "Recruit Talik, remove your face shield," the DI yelled again. He reached up and struggled to get it off his head, his snout making it difficult to spin the gear back around without hurting himself. He finally got it off, relishing the feel of cool, cold air on his soaking wet facial fur. He blinked rapidly as his eyes adjusted to the ruddy sunlight and placed the face shield on the floor before returning to a position of attention. The DI pointed at him and addressed the recruits. "Do any of you know why Recruit Talik did not win this round?" Still staring straight ahead, Talik heard one of them answer the question from somewhere behind him. "I do, Drill Sergeant." "Recruit Lambert, please enlighten us." Recruit Talik allowed himself to be goaded into anger and uncontrolled aggression, Drill Sergeant. He fought with his anger, not his mind. "Out-fucking standing, Lambert. You could have been a general with a brain like that someday if you weren't a goddamn mouth-breather who looks like someone beat the shit out of your birthing creche with a baseball bat while you were still gestating." "Thank you, Drill Sergeant," Lambert answered as several of the human recruits snorted, trying to hold in their laughter. They failed miserably, and the DI as well as two others immediately pounced on the offenders, screaming at the top of their lungs as they ordered them to fall out. Talik was grateful that he still couldn't understand half of what the humans said as he continued to stare straight ahead, listening to the sounds of the human recruits dry heaving as the drill instructors mercilessly punished them for breaking discipline. This went on for some time, and Talik finally breathed a sigh of relief thinking the DI had forgotten about him. The instructor suddenly appeared directly in front of him, his eyes bulging out as a fine mist of saliva hit Talik's snout, while the DI screamed in his face from less than 2 paw lengths away. "Did you think I forgot about you, Recruit Talik? You're the only goddamn trash panda here, and you're kinda hard to miss, you fucking hairy Pepe Le Pew-looking son of a bitch. Now tell me why you fucked up and got your ass handed to you." Talik resisted the urge to wipe the human's spittle from his snout, and suppressed his desire to claw the human's face for speaking to him in such an insulting manner. "I am not on Xenxia," he reminded himself. "I chose this. Drill Sergeant, my opponent wanted to mate with me. I cannot allow him to dominate me like that. My clan would cast me out if I allowed a human male to mount me, Drill Sergeant." The DI's eyes widened at what Talik said, and he could almost vow on the sacred stone that the corners of the drill instructor's mouth started curling up before he began barking in Talik's face again. "Recruit Talik, the worst thing I ever saw in my life was 2 chihuahuas trying to fuck. I would gladly pay credits to have my eyeballs taped open and be forced to watch that abomination for the rest of my life than to see Recruit Johansson trying to copulate with a goddamn Zenshin." There was more snorting and laughter from the recruits around Talik, immediately followed by enraged screaming as the other DIs ordered the newest offenders to fall out for punishment. The DI in front of Talik continued ranting at no one in particular as he stalked in front of them, waving his arms around wildly. "Unfucking believable. I have Pepe Le Pew here, a known molester, telling me that Casper the Ghost is trying to fornicate with him. The war hasn't even started yet, and they are already sending me the genetic leftovers scraped from the bottom of the barrel. This is ass backwards. I'm only supposed to be training degenerates and morons after everyone else has been killed first. But no, instead I have a badger and a fucking albino trying to hump each other." The DI suddenly stopped ranting and charged at Talik so aggressively, he truly thought the DI was going to strike him. He instinctively bared his fangs and brought his paws up, his claws automatically protracting in self-defense. The DI noticed the aggressive reaction and halted his advance, now 1.5 arm lengths distant and out of range of Talik's sharp, curved claws. The DI eyed the claws warily before staring into Talik's eyes as if he were digging into his very soul. This time the barest hint of a smile touched the DI's lips before turning back into the perpetual frown that Talik thought was a permanent facial feature until now. Still out of striking range, the drill instructor spoke again, his voice no longer screaming and full of disgust. "Recruit Talik, I see you have the ability to react to danger and defend yourself. That is good. It will do you no good if you are ruled by your passions, though. Fight with your mind first, then your heart. You are not here to learn how to die for your world, Recruit Talik. You are here to learn how to make the enemy die for trying to kill your family. The longer you are alive, the more of them you will kill. Do you understand the difference now, Recruit Talik?" Talik, still surprised at the almost friendly disposition of the drill instructor, made himself as rigid as he could before yelling out his response. "Yes, Drill Sergeant, I understand now. Thank you, Drill Sergeant." As soon as Talik confirmed he understood what the DI was trying to teach him, the drill instructor's face changed back to its habitual angry disgust as he started screaming at Talik again. "Good. You better unfuck yourself or I will PT you until your fur falls off. You will look like a fucking mole rat with cancer by the time I'm done with you. You get me, Recruit Talik?" Talik did not understand half of what the human was saying, but he did know one thing. He had better act like he did. "Yes, Drill Sergeant. Get back in formation, Talik." Talik spun around and returned to his position within the formation as the drill instructor raised his hoarse, grating voice to be heard by all the recruits. "I hope you enjoyed your break. Line up nuts to butts, hams to clams. We are doing a 10K, courtesy of Recruit Talik and Recruit Johansson. Move out." Talik suppressed the groan that wanted to come out of his jaws. He hated running like the humans did. It was incredibly difficult for him considering he was descended from ambush predators. Their claws repeatedly striking against the ground was not something the Zengsin were used to, and it was excruciating to endure for such long distances. SCAs. 1.5 solar hours later, Talik was limping badly as he stared at the Republic flag flowing in the breeze above the treetops. Judging the distance, he figured he had at least another 2,000 paces to go, the equivalent of just over 3.5 human kilometers. All the other human and Eliani recruits had passed him long ago and finished the run, and he was the last one, as he always was. He saw a fallen tree on the side of the running path and headed towards it, deeply inhaling the pine scent of the trees surrounding him. He groaned with relief as he sat down on top of the half-rotted trunk, disturbing an insect nest that was inside of it. Thousands of small brown insects swarmed out, and he ran a hand through them, scooping up dozens of them and then using his long tongue to lick them off his hand. They were slightly bitter, but he was so hungry he did not care. One of them somehow avoided being torn apart by his fangs and bit him, causing him to scream out in pain. He stuck his tongue out and looked down with his eyes, seeing it hanging on the side with its tiny mandibles. He used 2 fingers and squished it before pulling his tongue back in and swallowing it. He quickly scooped up 2 more handfuls of the insects and ate them, wishing he had water to wash the bitterness out of his mouth. Leaning down, he examined his clawed paws, gingerly pressing against one of them. He cried out in pain before cursing in Zenshin as he checked the other claws. He wasn't paying attention to the path, and he slammed his paw into a tree root that was now exposed due to erosion. It was definitely broken, and he did not want to feel any more pain. He was tired of hurting and suffering. He had been so sure of himself when he decided to join the Republic Interspecies Training Battalion. The humans were excellent fighters in space and within their machines, but he always considered them weak. They looked frail to him, as if he could tear them apart with ease. They did not have claws or loose skin to protect from bites and claws. They did not have sharp teeth, and they would die of exposure quickly on Zengxia if they were dropped into the middle of the wilderness with no clothes to cover their nakedness. His opinion was shared by many of the younger Zengxian, who always considered themselves the toughest of all the species in the Commonwealth. They greatly respected the combat abilities of the human warships and their willingness to fight to the death to save others. When it came to their physical abilities, however, The Zenxian tendency for arrogance clouded their perception of the soft, hairless allies. He went to the capital to join the RITB, and there was a slightly older Zenxian in charge of induction into the volunteer battalion. He was covered in scars, and his bearing marked him as an obvious veteran of battles. He was missing his left arm, and Talik studiously avoided looking at the bioprosthetic in its place. After Talik submitted his application, he arrogantly made an offhand remark about easily completing the training of the weak humans. He continued boasting as the veteran placed his application on top of the pile. He had nearly finished saying those words when the warrior veteran shot up and clasped his claws around Talik's neck with his right arm, cutting of his breath with paws as hard as Glarshic stone would. The warrior lifted him easily off the ground and brought his face to within a paw's distance as he snarled at Talik, his sharp fangs wet with saliva. He growled with fury as he spoke, his eyes digging into Talik's soul. "Youngling, you know not what you speak of. I have fought with the humans on the worlds of the dead zone when we took the planets back from the insectoids. 22 humans died saving my life, and the lives of over 100 Zenxian after our own clanmates left us behind when they retreated from the endless waves like cowards. They came for us, you dull-minded youngling. And when they found us, they fought off wave after wave of drone attacks, dying all around me even as I begged them to kill me and save themselves. They do not leave anyone behind, human or ally. I am here only because of them." Talik felt his vision darken as he started passing out, and the warrior let him go suddenly. He collapsed on the floor, heaving for air as he stared up in terror at the warrior looming over him. They may not have claws, fangs, or fur, but they do not need them. They are fighters and killers, you weak-minded fool. One human warrior is worth 10 Zenxian, and if you ever speak ill of them again in my presence, I will disembowel you. You will soon see just how tough they truly are and how lucky we are to have allies such as them, youngling." Shame of his arrogance and stupidity came over Talik as he remembered that interaction while debating whether or not to just tear the broken claw off. He was right, Talik thought to himself. I was a fool, and these humans are not weak. I am the weak one sitting on a tree, always last, always losing to the humans. Talik heard sudden sounds near him, pushing himself off the trunk as his fur puffed out. The humans believed in protecting the natural world, and they did not kill off all the predators like other species did. The sounds drew closer, and his claws protracted as his fear response activated. He looked around for a weapon before the source of the noises came into view. It was Recruit Johansson, his pale skin glistening with sweat. Talik went into a defensive posture, as there was only one reason for the human to be here. He must be intent on either mating or killing Talik for revenge. The human finally saw him and stopped, smiling with malicious pleasure. "There you are, Talik. Come on. I'll help you the rest of the way." He took 2 paces towards Talik and then stopped again as Talik loudly growled, baring his fangs and stomping his good foot on the ground. The human raised both hands, a confused expression on his face, as he eyed Talik with apprehension. "What the fuck is your problem, Talik? Why are you getting ready to attack me?" Talik snarled as he responded, trying to bluff the large human. "I will not let you mount me or kill me, human. I will fight you to death before such dishonor is brought upon my clan." The human stared at Talik in silent shock for a few moments before he started loudly laughing with that grating sound the humans made. It made Talik angrier, and he stomped his foot again before slashing his claws through the air in front of him. The human continued laughing uncontrollably, and Talik wondered if he was suffering a psychotic breakdown as tears started coming out of the human's eyes. Finally, the human spoke again, gasping for air as he did so. "Holy shit, Talik. I think there has been a major cultural misunderstanding. I do not want to mate with you. I was mocking you. This is something humans do to each other in situations like that. And no offense, but I like human women. And you are definitely not my type." Talik became confused by what the human was saying, though he still maintained his defensive stance in case this was a trick. There was a lot he did not understand about human culture, and it was possible the human was telling him the truth. "If you are not here to mate, then you must be here to kill me for revenge," he finally said as he started shaking from the fighting chemicals still flooding his body. The human threw his hands up in frustration as he yelled back at Talik. "I am here to help you finish the run, Talik. I do not want to mate with you, nor do I want to kill you." Talik eyed him suspiciously before responding. "Why would you want to help me finish the run? You are not a companion to me." The human eyed Talik with an expression he could not identify before replying. "I do not need to be your companion to want to help you, Talik. You are here same as I am. That means you are willing to fight and die for your family and friends, just as I am. This makes you my brother, Talik. I do not need to like you to call you my brother. We do not leave anyone behind, and I will not leave you behind. So if you are done being a stubborn jackass, let's get going and finish this run." Talik remembered again what the veteran warrior had said to him when he submitted his application, and he bent his head down in shame at being proven wrong again about the humans. His claws retracted and he felt himself deflating as he spoke quietly to the ground, too ashamed to look the human in the eyes. "I regret questioning your motives and for misunderstanding your intentions. I am grateful you have come back for me. I do not deserve to have a companion such as you." Talik looked up after he finished speaking and finally looked at the human. The human nodded and approached him as if nothing at all had happened and held up a fist. Knowing what the fist represented, Talik made sure his claws were fully retracted before making his own fist and touching the human's. "It's all good, Talik. I will gladly pretend this never happened if you will do the same." Talik flicked his head up, indicating his agreement with what the human just said. Looking down at his bleeding paw, the human came over to his left side and wrapped his right arm around Talik's back, placing his hand under the shoulder joint. "Lean on me, I'll bear some of your weight." "Are you ready, Talik?" the human asked as he looked at Talik. Flicking his head up again, they started trying to walk in unison together, clumsily at first because of the different heights and body composition. They soon fell into a gait that worked for the both of them, and Talik looked up at the distant Republic flag fluttering in the wind above the treetops. It did not seem so far now, and Talik leaned against his human companion as they continued to walk together. Talik quickly glanced at his companion, seeing him in a new light as he felt the muscles of the human's arm straining to bear some of his weight. The warrior veteran was right. The Zengtian truly were fortunate to have such allies and companions as the humans. There was a question that Talik really wanted to ask, and he glanced at the human again as he asked it. "Johansson, what is a pepelapu? What is trash panna?" The human looked at him with a surprised expression before laughing loudly at the questions Talik had just asked him. For some reason, he did not find the laughter coming from the human so grating this time, and he listened intently as the human began to explain what they were.